Westside Market Master Plan. So we're here for In the Market for a Plan, where we're going to be presenting about a year's worth of work to think about the future of the master plan. So sort of order of operations. You're going to hear from me for a couple minutes, then you're going to hear from our incredible consultant, Ted Spitzer, about the master plan. You'll hear about the process, the recommendations. Then we're going to bring up a couple of our board members and vendors to do sort of a short, moderated conversation so you can hear their reactions to the master plan. And then after all of that, we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have questions, hold them to the very end. So my name is Jessica Trevisano. I am the senior strategist focused on Westside Market, hired by Mayor Bibb to really come up with a plan and a strategy for the future of the market. The market is so important to the city of Cleveland. All sorts of talking points. The market is so important to the city of Cleveland, and I think that's why all of you are here today, is because you all care about the market, which I appreciate. I want to first thank our sponsor for our In the Market series, PNC Foundation. They have generously sponsored a series of conversations all about Westside Market. So we've already done some talks about history, about women's entrepreneurship, about food access, all of these really important things that we'll talk about tonight that kind of weave through the operations of Westside Market. We have 3 additional events coming up. We have one next month about sort of culinary inspiration and how Westside Market has affected our food scene. So we'll have some great local chefs. We have one about climate resiliency, and then one about minority entrepreneurship. So thank you to PNC Foundation for being a great sponsor. Also have many partners to thank for this master plan process. So doing a master plan for the market takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of hands, takes a ton of time. So I want to thank the George Gund Foundation and the Mount Sinai Health Foundation for being instrumental partners to get all of this work done with us. I need to thank Ohio City Inc., who's been an amazing partner for Westside Market for decades, and I'm sure for decades to come. And then I need to thank my boss, Mayor Justin Bibb, for caring so much about the market and for making this a priority, and also for our city council, who have demonstrated their commitment to the market. This is a city-owned asset. It's going to continue to be city-owned, hopefully nonprofit operated, but it's something that is really important to all of us in the city. Okay, so with that, why do we care about the market? There's so many reasons. So the Westside Market is one of the biggest attractions in the city. 800,000 people visit every year. That's more than the Art Museum. That's more than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 46% of the market's visitors live in the city of Cleveland, and 25% have a household income of under $50,000. The market's serving a huge variety of people. We have about 70 small businesses that operate in the market. They employ about 250 people. You'll hear from a couple of them today. There are many of them here in the room today, which I'm so glad to see them here. About 50% of those merchants, or almost everybody who's able to do so, except SNAP and EBT, which is really important for food access. And we've been able to do some really great programs at the market around food access, such as the Produce Perks program that we did in partnership with Food Access Raises Everyone to get $35,000 worth of free fruits and vegetables into different households that was able to support our small businesses. It was really important. And then, part of this whole challenge with the market, though, is there's all of these amazing things, but it operates at a loss every year. So the city has to put in about $700,000 in subsidy every year. And part of the goal for this plan is to think about how we can make the market financially self-sustaining. So one of our, kind of the key goal of this entire process is to hand the market operations over to a new nonprofit. Yeah, I think the mic's kind of going up and down, so that might be part of why you're here. I'll try to talk really close to the mic. So one of the goals is our primary goal is to switch the operations of Westside Market from being city-owned and city-operated to still being city-owned, but to being nonprofit operated. That nonprofit is Cleveland Public Market Corporation. It's a new nonprofit entity that was formed this year that is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And there's a lot of really good things that can happen with a nonprofit operating the market. One is that the nonprofit can have this dual bottom line, both being mission focused and having the goal of being financially incentivized to have its operating expenses being covered by its revenue. That saves the city money in the long run because the nonprofit will be, hopefully, we think, operating in the black. We can also use the nonprofit to have different sources of revenue that the city just isn't able to access. Things like grants and sponsorships and event revenue, all things really important for the long-term mission of the market. We have a really amazing board who's diverse and passionate. We think we're gonna have a staff that is also diverse and passionate, and those people can be devoted full time to the operation of the market. Every day, all they have to think about is the market. They don't have to think about streets, they don't have to think about garbage pickup, all of these other things that cities have to care about. And then we really think that the West Side Market, under nonprofit operation, can be a leader in food access and education and small business entrepreneurship. So this is our board, and we have many of our board members here today. We're really proud of this board and really excited to have them here. If you're a board member, do you mind standing up just for a second so we can praise you and say what a great job you're already doing? Thank you. 3 of our board members are nominated by the Tenants Association, 3 by the Mayor's Office, 1 by City Council. And that is kind of going to go on in perpetuity. It was really important to us that the merchants have representation on the board. Those boards have multiple committees. The hope is that these committees will be staffed not only with board members and the staff of the nonprofit and vendors, but also with folks like you who care about the market and who have skills to offer. So I wanted to just mention that there will be future opportunities to engage with the market and with the nonprofit board. So there will be a merchant relations committee, a facilities committee, and a community engagement committee. So just make sure you pay attention to the future of the market and apply to be on those committees. So tonight, what we're here mainly to talk about is the master plan. As you may have known, especially those of you who've been in the area or engaged with the market for a long time, we have a lot of plans about the market. Some of you have been to this meeting like 2 or 3 times now over your lifetime. So what makes this plan different? One, this plan does build on all of the work that we've been doing in those plans, or that has been done through those plans. There's been tons of engagement, tons of ideas, tons of just really good work in those plans. But this plan, we really wanted to make sure focused on the operations and the financial sustainability of the market. So not just pretty pictures, but also like a business plan behind it to show how the market can operate and sustain in the long term. So Ted is here to talk through all of that. But we really want to keep the market authentic. We want to maintain all of the characteristics that you love, the fresh food focus, these multi-generational businesses, all of the things that make the market special. So we're going to talk about food halls and prepared food and all of these, event spaces. All of that is to support what makes the market special and authentic. And that is these vendors who are, all the people that we really care about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ted, who's going to tell you about the plan.
Thank you very much. Can I be heard okay in the back? Yes. All right, well, thank you, Jessica. The mayor made a pretty incredible appointment when he selected Jessica Terzano to be his special, whatever you are, for West Side Market. So she's been a real pleasure to work with. Again, my name is Ted Spitzer. I have a company called Market Ventures, Inc. I live in a place where there is no smog like this in Portland, Maine, but I have been coming now to Cleveland for the past year to be working on this project. I have devoted my entire career to public markets. I started doing this work when I was in college, and I have had the opportunity to work on historic markets throughout the United States, like Lexington Market in Baltimore, which has been operating since 1780s, and many others. I brought this cumulative experience to the work here in Cleveland. So again, some of the projects that I've worked on, again, many historic markets. I've also been involved with helping to start new markets in various places around the country. I was hired to develop this master plan, and the scope of work includes kind of all these different pieces. Under the first phase of research and assessment, and reviewing all of the other master plans that have been done. As Jessica mentioned, some really good work had been done recently around that. But we did some additional research to really understand who was shopping at the market today and answer some unanswered questions. There is a phase 1 report. It is on the mayor's website. So if anyone needs some bedtime reading to help you fall asleep, I encourage you to go there. And then over the last a number of months, been working on the vision for the market, the design ideas, and the business plan elements. The work has been guided by an advisory committee, some of the same people who are now on the board of directors, but it actually was a broader group that was involved in the advisory committee, including a number of market merchants and a number of people from the city. So this was a fantastically diverse, interesting, and engaged group who very much helped shape the master plan. So we did a whole lot of different things in this process. I met individually with almost every merchant in the market. We did a customer intercept survey, and brought in national best practices from other historic public markets, in-depth review of how the market is operating, and met multiple times with the Merchants Association as well. All of the advisory committee meetings are also online. So if you'd like to both look and read, you can have more, watch an hour and a half long meeting. But again, all the information, the whole process is very transparent, so anyone who's interested can follow what happened. So here are just some of the meetings that we had over the course of the past year with the advisory committee, with the tenant association, and with the new corporation. A part of the work was to develop a clear mission, values, and vision for the market. So the market's future can be grounded in mission and values and vision. So this is the written vision statement, repeats some of the things that Jessica said, and I think really captures what people love about Westside Market. So what are some of the key findings? Well, first of all, you have the most beautiful market in America. And yes. The problem is, over the last 120 years, it hasn't been well taken care of. So there are some serious issues. It's a beautiful cathedral to food, but it has some real problems. We know that the market can play really impactful roles in a number of areas, really important issues to Cleveland and to every city in America, around access to fresh and healthy food, to support small businesses, to develop innovative workforce development programs, and to garner tourism. The multi-generational fresh food businesses here are the envy of most other public markets in America. The fact that you have businesses that connected directly to the founding of the market in 1912. There are a lot of vacancies in the market today. 32% of the area of the entire market is vacant. It's a problem. It's one reason why the city has had to subsidize the market. But it also provides some great opportunity to make some changes. And so it allows us to propose changes to improve the market without having to displace or change the merchants who are there today. What we found, what has been repeated over and over in the research, is while people love to shop for fresh food, interesting specialty foods at the market, they also want to eat. They also want to have something to drink when they're there. And so we had to look at how do we serve that need without altering or messing up the aspects which are so good. And finally, there are some really amazing spaces in the market that are kind of hidden away that provide opportunities for new programmatic uses. Again, the report is thorough and long, and I encourage anyone who's interested to access it and read it. I just want to hit some really highlights. So one is the strategies. We try to be driven by clear strategy to inform both any design changes and any operational changes. So we identified 8 different strategies, prioritizing the market's traditional offerings of fresh and specialty foods, supporting these long-term, multi-generational businesses, expanding the product offerings to include more ethnic specialties, and more prepared food and beverages, to diversify the merchants, better represent the region's racial and ethnic composition, to expand food production within the market, introduce improved merchandisers and technologies which are available now to better serve customers, increasing the availability and production, the availability, promotion of local foods, and become the premier place to learn about and celebrate food. How do we do that? Some of it is around programs and new social service recommendations, food access. About half the merchants now already accept SNAP, which is the old food stamps. One day we'll stop saying that, but we'll say that, SNAP, EBT. But we think we can do more and encourage every eligible vendor to take SNAP. Here's things we can do with workforce development. There's this amazing process that's happened in the market over the years where people come in as a teenager, work there, get trained, and then eventually own their own business in the market. We think we can support those in new ways to encourage that kind of workforce development and small business development. New ways or improve spaces and programs for education to teach people about healthy eating and delicious eating. Then a whole variety of ways to support community building. So physical changes are necessary. Some of them are just because this is an old building, a beautiful building, and it needs to be repaired. And so things like having a roof that doesn't leak is really important. Having an adequate electrical supply is really important. That's number one, we can fix that. Two, it could be a lot more functional for the merchants. I'm sure many of you have shopped there when it's cold in the market or really hot in the market. It does not have air conditioning, and that's kind of a basic standard in our society now, particularly as the weather changes, to have HVAC. The basement is the critical aspect of the market's operation. It is in dire need of repair. The elevators break down, you hear about that on the news all the time. So there are a bunch of things just to make it function better that need to happen. Then there's reasons to make physical changes because it can drive new sources of revenue. I'll talk about that in detail. And then more facilities to do great programming. So lots of reasons why we should be making physical changes. So it all starts in the basement. This is the part that most customers never see. But if you travel around and you go to other markets, you'll know that the spaces where merchants operate from are very small. One reason we have 100 spaces and not that huge a building. And it only happens because they have their products and some of their processing happens right below the market in the basement. The basement is the full footprint of the entire building. And that has been held back and is problematic because it's not been improved. So we start there. Our design, I want to mention I work with an architect. The only thing I don't do is the design. I work with an incredible architect named Hugh Boyd, who is really the country's only specialist in public markets, and he's devoted his entire career to this field. So he very carefully laid out and planned a basement with new coolers, new production spaces, lockers, all sorts of things to function better. Also adding new elevators. Bathrooms are not accessible by elevators today. We can add a new elevator to the arcade where the produce is, where the basement actually goes underneath there. Lots of opportunities to improve the basement. It's not inexpensive to fix this basement because it needs to really be wiped clean and started over. And the merchants have to keep operating during the construction period. So there's a lot to do in the basement, but it actually will be so important. And it's a really exciting piece of a metal tire here, of course, and a metal elevator. So we're adding one thing really important element, which is a shared commercial kitchen in the basement. So we devoted some space to that. And this next picture shows you what the blow-up view of what that looks like. So the idea of the kitchen is really to have two full operating kitchens. Used for a number of different purposes. One is to support the merchants who are there today. Many of them actually use off-site production facilities and then bring their product into the market whenever they sell. Quite inefficient. It would be possible for some of them to do their work right in the market, and they could use this shared commercial kitchen. It's also an opportunity to support startup entrepreneurs who can use the kitchen, perhaps in a kitchen incubator program, which helps to launch new businesses. These could be the merchants of tomorrow who start producing their product here and then selling it either to merchants upstairs or selling it directly themselves from spaces within the market. Other public markets have similar facilities. I have photographs here of a market I helped plan in Grand Rapids, Michigan, called the Grand Rapids Downtown Market. It also has a shared commercial kitchen. They've been operating for 10 years, very successful. All right, so now we'll move upstairs. This is a floor plan for the market. We are proposing some substantial changes in the arcades and some important but smaller changes for the market hall itself. As you know, the arcade historically has been where produce is sold, but today the arcades are about half empty, 50% vacancy in the arcade. Our plan says let's cluster all of the produce into what we're calling the East Arcade, which is the east, a smaller bit. The part to the far right, which will have 24 spaces for produce merchants in an improved building. So today there's no heating or no air conditioning in those spaces. We'll upgrade them, make them much more functional for the produce merchants and locate them there. And then take the North Arcade, once the East Arcade is improved, to turn the North Arcade into a center of eating and drinking. With modern lingo is often called a food hall. So same basic idea of what's in the market in the sense of small, local, independent businesses, but a focus on prepared food and beverages. So people can eat in that zone, but maintain the big market hall and the East Arcade for fresh and specialty products. And then we are proposing some improvements in the northeast and southwest corners of the building to make it more functional. So this is the East Arcade today, and the plan is to make the renovations and to create a new East Hall that is all produce and has more flexibility. Today, recall that you have one way of selling, which is all the merchants are behind a very tall riser. If merchants want that, they can do that, but they also can design spaces in different ways. You can walk in and have more display. Once we improve the building with air conditioning, then they can have coolers there and refrigeration for their produce, which really should help the product quality. The North Arcade, as I mentioned, will become a food hall. We have room for 12 independent local businesses to sell from here. 2 would be bars, so people can finally get a beer in the market. And 8 would have hoods, so there can be cooking directly in the market. And again, 12 overall. 362 seats, so people finally have a place to sit down and not be on a ledge up on the balcony. So we have indoor and outdoor seating, cooking happening there. And this is one of the places where we can introduce more diversity in the market, because what we want is diverse cuisine, and diverse cuisine often is diverse people. And so that is the opportunity here to really offer something very new to Westside Market, again, without altering the incredible shopping experience which is inside the Market Hall and in the East Arcade. So today it looks like that, but we can use the same building and turn it into something that feels a lot more like that. So again, we're very excited about this aspect. Another piece of the puzzle is that food hall merchants are quite profitable, and the rent that we can derive from this space turned into a food hall rather than a produce area or vacancy, which is today, is really substantial. And that income that helps us pay to operate the market without a subsidy. Really interesting space between the North Arcade and the building. Today it's an alleyway, and there are a couple of benches out there, but a little grubby, I'd say, most of the time. So the notion is, wow, how do we turn that into a really great pedestrian space? Make connectors between the main market hall and the North Arcade, so it's covered, like being closed in the winter time, and some landscaping and seating and lighting and making a really wonderful outdoor seating area. Also a kind of cool event space, not as cool as this event space, but a pretty cool event space as well, particularly when the catering is done by the market merchants, which it is being done today, and obviously there's great food available to eat at the market. In the northeast corner, we need to do some things to improve bathrooms and to improve circulation. So, I'll be talking in a second about the new upstairs event space. It needs an elevator and staircase. So that gets placed into the northeast corner of the building. And so perhaps you've glanced up and seen this kind of amazing area on the eastern edge of the market and wondered what's up there. Well, until very recently, it had a men's locker room upstairs. The lockers have been removed, but you can see those streaks on the floor that was there before. So this is an amazing opportunity for an event, a small event space. So the plan takes that area that's there today, creates an event space, you see on the middle of the right, creates a bridge kind of in front of it, because we have to connect some funny levels up there with more tables and chairs. And then in the bottom right, creating a teaching kitchen. to a place to do educational programming. So this, I don't have a good slide because we don't have a photograph from that high up in the air, but this hopefully gives you a sense of what that space can be with that bridge, that lower level with seating, and a fantastic event space that looks over downtown Cleveland. And then the other space you probably have never seen still is a women's locker room. Again, a little bit grungy up there. So we're taking this space and turning it into a hands-on teaching facility. The way it's been laid out is with a full teacher's instruction area, and 6 workstations that have induction cooktops, very flexible space that can support both classes that happen there, but also if there's catering that happens in the bigger event space, they can use this space to support it. So a very flexible and useful space. All right, so those are some of the design ideas. Again, the posters are out in the lobby. We'll look and see them more closely. So as Jessica mentioned, we have to get beyond pictures. We need to see that the economics work. So a lot of my focus has been on the economics. What are our goals for operation? Again, the notion of the nonprofit, meet its mission, it's got to pay its bills. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to recognize that there'll be higher expenses to operate the market professionally with the right staff necessary to run the market. I'll show you a picture in a minute, the kind of staff that's typical to run a market. The city has done a pretty good job, actually, over the years to get the cost of operations down, but that lower cost comes at its own cost, which is not enough management support to run a market well. So we need to look at a budget to operate the market at being higher than it has been. At the same time, we got to keep the rents affordable for the merchants who are there today, particularly because they have been living in a building that has not met their needs. So the plan is not going to be implemented on the backs of the existing merchants. That means we need new income streams, and luckily we have them. The very important one is the parking lots, which are owned by the city and currently operated by the city parking department, but not very profitably. And there's opportunities to make small tweaks, how much it's charged, when the free parking is there, and when game days happen, and have a much more significant cash flow from the parking garage that can help both the operational cost of the market and to pay some of the debt that will be necessary to pay for some of these improvements that I've talked about. There's also an opportunity as a nonprofit to accept donations and sponsorships and other things that the city government just don't do. And the goal will be then, following facility upgrades and the creation of these new income producing areas, to then wean away from the subsidy. We have tried to be very clear. I think we made our message to City Council, and I think the Mayor's administration very understands it as well, that it won't happen overnight. We can't get from large subsidy to no subsidy in one fell swoop. We need the time to make the improvements, get the new cash flow, and then, I'll show you the numbers behind that, it can operate without any city subsidy. So I just want to quickly show a slide that compares West Side Market with 2 sister public markets around the country, Findlay Market in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, and both historic, had been city-owned. Reading Terminal, funny story, but city-owned Findlay Market, and then nonprofit operated. And you can see this is their operating budgets. Findlay operates on about a $3.2 million budget. Reading Terminal on a $4.5 million budget. The City of Cleveland has operated West Side Market on a $1.7 million budget. And again, that is less, and I guess a good thing, but it's come at a major cost to not do some things which public markets need to do, both in terms of staff and marketing and supporting the maintenance and many other aspects. So as I mentioned, we need a professional, robust management staff to run this market appropriately. So the master plan identifies these positions: an executive director who's passionate about the market and all the promise of the market, and then professional operations managers, marketing folks, merchant coordinator, a development and partnerships manager to help bring in more revenue, and a finance manager. So we'll have a staff of about 9, 11 people at the end of the day. So here's a lot of numbers. And I'm not going to go into great detail, but it's meant to represent on the income side that we're going to keep the merchant rents and fees pretty similar to what they are today, until maybe sometime in the future. The big change comes when that North Arcade is open, and we can derive the revenue from the new North Arcade as a food hall to support the operations for the fresh and specialty businesses that are in the main market hall and the East Arcade. Events, a little bit of events today, but when we get the event space and the educational spaces and we have the staff, then we can see significant income from special events. At the Grand Rapids Downtown Market, which I already mentioned, we have some pretty cool spaces there. They've become the #1 wedding venue in the city. People love to have events at markets, and they should. It's a great, fun place, and it can all be catered by the merchants, which is so fun. Again, the parking revenue as an opportunity, initially we're showing it to help support operations, and then when we got to build the expensive things like the North Arcade, we can devote that towards debt, and we can convert maybe up to $1 million of revenue from parking revenues to pay for a pretty big loan. Contributions, again, we're a nonprofit, we can accept contributions the way the city does not. Again, we're showing for the first number of years some ongoing city transfers. This is the general subsidies that the city has provided. But once these facilities are in place, there's an opportunity to then lose the city subsidy. And then vacancies and so forth. We have a lot of experience on the operating side, what it costs to pay for electricity and all the other elements. Those stay very similar because we have the history. The difference on the operating side is the salaries. And they will go up as spaces come online. Like, we don't need an operator for the basement shared kitchen space until we have a basement shared kitchen. So the numbers pop up over the time, not because people are getting big raises, because we're adding more staff as the different pieces come online. So again, showing and using the parking contribution to help make it, and the city's contribution to make the nonprofit break even every year. What's it going to cost to do all these things that we've talked about, the physical changes? We don't know exactly yet. We're in a very early stage of design. We have had a professional cost estimate, and it's coming in the mid $40 million level. That's a big number. The city city council has already devoted $10 million of ARPA funds towards this. So we're between a quarter and a fifth of the way there already. We're feeling very confident in the variety of financing programs that are out there for which the market is eligible, that we can get to that number. So again, we don't know yet, it's early in the game. We've got to have a great plan to start with, and then we move to the next step. And that's very much a focus of the new corporation and the city to make sure that this gets financed. My last slide is just to say that this is a process. Jessica started a year and a half ago. I started a year ago on this work. We're kind of right on schedule with the hope that the transfer to the nonprofit will happen at the beginning of the year. Again, there are some important hurdles that have to happen between then and now. The biggest one will be a lease between the city and Cleveland Public Market Corporation, which outlines all the roles and responsibilities of both organizations going forward. So that lease conversation is happening now, hoping it gets finalized in the fall, and then the staff can be hired and the transfer can happen. So that's my last slide. I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to have worked on this project, and I certainly wish you all, Westside Market, the best of luck.
Thank you, Ted, so much for that presentation. Like I said, we're gonna get to audience questions in a minute, but first I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to hear from vendors, to hear from some of the board of director members about this plan. People always ask me, what do the vendors think? I think it would be best to hear from them. So I want to be able to tell you what they think. I'm joined here today by Dave Abbott. I'm going to go down the line. Dave Abbott was most recently the president of the George Glenn Foundation until he retired, and then we dragged him out of retirement to become the president of Cleveland Public Market Corporation. And we're very grateful to have his expertise on the board. And then we have Don Whitaker, who is the owner of DW Whitaker Meats at the market. longtime vendor, and very importantly, the president of our tenants association at the market. So he not only spends all of his time operating the business, but then in his, maybe more than a part-time job, also is the president of the tenants association. Jason Russell is the board's vice president of facilities. He is the vice president of operations and leasing for Bedrock Detroit, and was formerly overseeing the Van Aken district, which is a food hall in Shaker Heights that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And then to my immediate left, I have Ruby Thomas, who is the operator of Ohio City Pasta, who's sort of the second generation of Ohio City Pasta, another long-time business in the market. So let's just have to welcome them here. Thank you for all. And then just to start, I'm going to ask everybody the same question, which is, can you just tell me what stands out in this plan to you? Can you just talk a little bit about what you're excited for, what stands out? And I'll start with you, Don. Pass the mic a little bit. It should already be on.
Good evening. Thanks for everyone coming. And the first thing that stands out is just the upgrades in infrastructure. HVAC, something we've been trying to get for years in the market and all that. And just taking care of the vendors and how we do business, and so it can benefit the customers. And then just being on this advisory committee, the mayor, that vendors were involved in it, and we were still working with the Cleveland Public Market Corporation. It's the new nonprofit, and they're taking the vendors, their opinions to heart and all that, and we can really see that. And just go little things like that, and getting the building back to where it should be. We're excited about that.
All sorts of important stuff that isn't necessarily sexy, but really important for the operations of the market. Ruby, what about you? What stands out in the plan for you?
Infrastructure is always super important as a stand operator. Anybody that owns a stand, we need the facilities to operate in a manner that we can operate our business out of. But that going more of the sexy stuff, I'm really excited for the customer experience aspect of it. The North Arcade portion of it and the outdoor kind of alleyway, very exciting.
Jason?
I would say, for me, what excites me the most is thinking outside of the four walls of the existing Westside market, and how through the nonprofit we can actually reach out to the community and create opportunities around food access, workforce development, and urban agriculture. We learn so much from the other markets across the country, and how they are doing so much to support the vendors who are coming into the market, help them grow their business and innovate them, but then also connecting urban farmers to the folks who are selling produce. You're creating a local economy just through the public markets. So I'm really excited.
Dave?
When you add what Jason was just talking about to the physical changes that Ted talked about, what really excites me about this is that when we do this, and I'm not if, but when we do this, we will have not just the most beautiful market in America, we will have the very best, and we're going to do that.
My next question's for Don. So Don, you've been president of the Tenants Association for years now. You've been really involved in the Tenants Association for years. As a leader in the market, you've been the face of a lot of advocacy. Can you talk a little bit about that advocacy and why having a nonprofit operating the market is so important for vendors?
Yeah, I've been a vendor for over 30 years now. I've been on the Westside Market Board for a number of years as treasurer, and the last 4 or 5 years I've been the president. And our goal as a board was to get to this point. So it's nice to see that we're finally there. There is a plan, not just a plan to have a plan, that we actually have something we can work and improve on. And hats off to the people who are working for the city, in the market. They just the way the structure and the system was, and they it couldn't succeed that way. So it needed to change. Everyone's realized that, and we got the support of the city, and it's just good to see where it's gone, and the board that I'm on and all that. Everyone's working hard to get to this point, you know, even before I became president, you know. So it's a nice progression.
When I started this role in January of 2022, I learned, so there's a market manager who reports up to sometimes a deputy commissioner, then reports up to a commissioner, who has an assistant director, to a director, to a deputy COO, to a COO, to a chief of staff, then to the mayor. I mean, and when you talk about bureaucracy and how much of a challenge it was to get something done at the market, frankly still is at times, it is, I mean, what Don said is really true. It's really hard to see how a market could operate at the pace of business when it's government operated, right? Like I said, the government has so many things that it has to think about. So I am similarly excited for a nonprofit operator who can, you know, be more responsive and do that decision making, you know, immediately, so that when the lights go out, they can call an electrician and don't have to, you know, wait for whatever that electrician can become available. Dave, can you talk a bit? I know we mentioned that Cleveland Public Market Corporation is planning to take over operation of the market in January of next year, is the goal right now. Can you talk a bit about, I know you said you're feeling good about how this is going to go. Can you talk a bit about the next steps and kind of what the board has been working on so far and kind of what's next for the board as it gears up for operating the market?
Well, I certainly don't want to minimize the amount of work that has to be done, because it is an enormous lift that we have to undertake, because it really is a startup organization with the Public Market Corporation, grafting onto a more than 100-year-old operation that's continuing to run, and we have to make a lot of changes while the train is still going. So there is a tremendous amount of work to be done. It will be tough. The next critical path item, which Jessica said, is the negotiation of lease and management agreement between the Public Market Corporation and the City of Cleveland. And we're really just beginning that process, but I'm optimistic that we will get to a point where we have an agreement which will put the Cleveland Public Market Corporation in a position to not just take over the operation of the market, but to do it with a very high likelihood of success. We don't want to be treated like, oh, here's a hot potato, you take it on and good luck to you. And it has to be an ongoing partnership between the Market Corporation and the City of Cleveland. The city will remain the owner of the building and will, of course, retain a keen interest in the future of the market and its success. So for all those reasons, I think I'm pretty optimistic that we'll get it done, but it's going to be a challenge in many ways is to get through the process and get it approved by council. And then we have to hire a staff, starting with an executive director. We'll have to hire the various people that Ted referred to in his talk. And that's a process that has its own challenges. And so we have a lot of work to do there, and then those people have to learn the operation, and they have to take over and make sure that the market runs as well as it needs to. And that's not an easy business. So there's just a tremendous amount of work to be done. But as I hope you can tell, we are passionate about it, and I know that we're going to hire people who will be equally passionate about it, and that we will have a tremendous success on our hands when it's all said and done.
It's a lot of work, but a really great team to do it. Ruby, you kind of, you know, Ted talked about how there are these people who kind of grew up either working at the market or grew up in the market and then took over the business or bought a business. Can you talk about some of the changes you've seen since when you were sort of a kid watching your dad operate the market and what you've seen today, and what made you decide to come back to the market world?
Yeah, so I think a huge difference that's happened over the course of, you know, since I was a kid is I think we are a huge tourist attraction, and I think that that needs to be recognized. I mean, there's so many people that are regulars at the market that shop and come a weekly, bi-weekly kind of basis, but I think we're becoming more and more, I mean, in the digital age, right, it's a beautiful building to take a photo of on your phone and post it, right? So, I mean, I think that's a huge thing that's changed. As far as vendors go, I think there's been a pretty decent shift into female ownership as well, which is pretty interesting and reassuring. Yeah.
Jason, I had mentioned when I, kind of first introduced you that you had worked at the Beacon District. When I started this role, I talked to market operators from all over the country, all over the world, and realized that there was just so much to learn from other market operators. That we aren't the first market to do this change, we're not the first place to operate a market. Can you talk about some of the lessons you think that we can learn from Beacon District, other sort of similar retail spaces for Westside Market?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is when we started this concept of the Van Acre Market Hall back in 2017, there was two things we were focused on. And they were all around creating community. And so internally, we wanted to create a community among vendors because we look at places like the Westside Market, we see the way they support one another is part of the success of the market. So as we're trying to create something from the ground up, and we're saying, hey, we need a baker, we need a brewer, we're making sure we're not just going to the first person who's going to sign on the dotted line, but to understand the bigger community mission. And then conversely also is how do you create the community outside the space? And in Shaker Heights, everyone was engaged like, okay, we want a place where we want to ride our bikes to. So we're trying to cultivate that, get them excited about creating a downtown for themselves. But what's unique about the Westside Market is it already has those things. We already have the great group of vendors that goes back generations. They are always supporting one another. They're always helping each other. And all of you is a representation of the community that already exists to support the Westside Market. So as we're talking about how do we take the Westside Market to the next step, we've already got the hard part figured out, right? We just have to take the next steps to improve the facility. So these guys can do their job easier, right? And then reach out into the larger community to bring more individuals into the Westside Market to experience a great place. And like Ruby said, most tourists who come to Cleveland, most people say, hey, go check out the Westside Market, right? We want to make sure the moment they step in, they're saying, wow, Cleveland has incredible things to offer. Right around the Westside Market looks that way until you start looking around the corners and oh wait, there's cracks over here, cracks over there. But we want people to say like, this is incredible, this is great. I want to, like tourists come and they want to try out some of the down stuff, but I can't really take fresh meat back with me. But the idea of the food hall is say, hey, you can go try it over at this stand. You can get my sausages or my bacon right there. And you can try that incredible cuisine right there in the Westside Market.
Well, I'm going to invite Ted back into my seat, and I'm going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions. So I'll walk around with the mic. You guys can all stay up here.
Can I add one thing? When I was talking about the work that had to be done, I didn't mention there's this small issue we have to deal with of raising $40+ million. And that's going to be a heavy lift because no one's ever raised money for the market before in any significant amount. There was a bit of a fundraiser with the Centennial a few years back. But as we tell this story about what the market can be, we're pretty optimistic that we will be able to attract the funding that we need to accomplish the program, the master plan. But it's going to take a lot of work, not just by us, but we hope by all of you as well. We hope we'll find ways for you to contribute in various ways, including financially, whether it's a small amount or larger. We are going to need the support of the community to make this community asset what it can be.
Questions? Raise your hand and I'll bring that.
You've got wonderful plans, and I'm excited about it, but nobody has mentioned putting a sign on the outside of the market. So I'm wondering if we have any plans for that. It looks like a railroad station. It looks like, well, people are looking for the Westside Market and they can't find it. They're standing right beside
There may be a need for a couple of signs.
Jessica, I think my question is for you. Is the parking lot part of the city's plan to put individual meters in?
Can everyone hear the questions, or do we need to repeat them? Okay, the question was, is the parking lot part of the city's plan for individual meters? It is not. It is kind of run separately, but the intention would be for the nonprofit to lease both the market and the parking lot, so then they would have the flexibility to set rates and maybe get rid of those gates, because if anybody's shopped there recently, the gates really clog up the everything. But the idea would be to still keep the rates on par with what the city meters are.
Just two questions. The city has consistently said that the parking has to be kept under city auspices because it's paying off debt? Not anymore. Okay, that's number one. Number two, can the capital improvements be made without the city process? It would be under the process of the newly formed group, you guys. So you don't have to spend 6 months.
Well, that's an issue that will be addressed in the negotiations of the lease. We think it's imperative that the Public Market Corporation have the greatest degree of control that can be legally provided in order to avoid the kind of slow and bureaucratic decision-making processes over all number of things, but including the improvements that need to be made. So it's a to-be-determined outcome, but I'm optimistic that the city would not have asked for this process to begin, to have the market corporation created, if it didn't intend to have us actually operate the market.
Number one, I'm aware of the improvements to the stands as vendors have moved around to allow those improvements to happen. I'm wondering, do the merchants think those improvements have been done well? Number two, I think we subsidize sports facilities a lot more than $700,000 a year, and I think it's good if individual entities can support themselves, but I think we should start with the sports facilities.
As far as the improvements, you know, there's been stand renovations. It's going okay, and there's been some things in there that this is what we're hoping with the new nonprofit, that, you know, that we're working with them a little closer than we did with the city before, then we can have more feedback on what those improvements are. Because I think a lot of the renovations that are going on now, some of them are they started out a one size fits all, and there's 70 businesses in there, and they're all different. So we're hoping to get away from that kind of logic and you know do improvements per business that it helps that business and move on from there.
You say in your promotional piece that you passed out that you expect to hire 20 full-time employees, and that a national search for an executive director is underway with an expected start date of June 2023, which is now. So I'm assuming that search is still underway, and your expected start date would be later this year. Is that what you're thinking?
I didn't quite catch all of that.
The question was, when will the executive director be starting?
Well, we realized as we embarked on this process that we couldn't hire an executive director until we had the lease and management agreement finalized with the city, because who would take a job that was not sure the job was going to actually exist or last very long? And so we realized we had to have that done first. So we're not done. We're really just beginning that. We have been conducting a search, however. So we've been interviewing people, and we've been very transparent with candidates about the nature of this process. We're optimistic we're going to hire someone, but we can't really pull the trigger on it until we know the job will be there.
There's a Netflix series called High at the Hall, and David Stephen Satterfield is the chef consultant, and he focuses on Afrocentric produce and recipes. And I'm just wondering if there's any way to find him to be one of the consultants to help bring the east side more into the west side market, because they have, black folks can have their own vegetables that they're comfortable with, and as part of their history and also the culinary history can also be producer of the new kitchens that we do. I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
Well, I'm not sure about him particularly, but I will say that the way the leasing has been done at the market for a number of years is that people show up and ask if there's space available. And then they have to go through again a somewhat bureaucratic process, whether there is a space there or not. The difference with a nonprofit and with a management organization is that we will have a person responsible for leasing. And their job is not to wait by the phone. Their job is to proactively go out and find merchants to meet customer needs and to fulfill the nonprofit's mission of supporting diversity. So it might mean having leasing materials in multiple languages. It might mean networking with organizations throughout Cleveland and the area that are working with and supporting startup entrepreneurs. So I think the first step is to have the intention of having a diverse vendor base and having the staff that can go do the work to make it happen. And until those pieces are in place, it's not a question of having another consultant, because, hey, consultants, who needs them? But having the right organization and the plan to actually make it happen. And then to go out and find the strategies to really diversify. So that's a good idea, because we need to get the foundation in place before those actions can be taken.
And I would also say, to answer that question, when we were deciding on what we're going to call this new nonprofit, we were very intentional in calling it Cleveland Public Market Corporation. And because the West Side Market, the name is a legacy of when we had multiple public markets in the city of Cleveland. Unfortunately, we don't. The West Side Market is the last one to make it. So we want to make sure that as this nonprofit starts managing the West Side Market, that we are inclusive of everyone in the city of Cleveland.
Speaking first on the west side or the east side. So we talked a little bit about the parking, but when I lived on the east side, I would take the Rapid in, being very convenient right across the street, as well as people just get annoyed by the parking lot. And parking, just out or driving down West 25th, it's always a pain. Is there more, like we've subsidized parking, is there a possibility of doing anything, giving the people on the east side especially more access to this through transportation networks?
Yeah, well, I guess a couple comments. As planners and as local residents, often we hope the cars would go away, and we know that they didn't leave a lot of problems. The challenge is when we do the research, we find that the vast majority of people who come to the market come by car, and so we don't want to take actions that would negatively impact the vendors in the market to support a goal, which unfortunately we're still very car dependent place. What we need to do is create the incentives that are right about making it convenient and easy. It is amazing that there's an RTA stop right across the street. Other markets have done things to encourage alternative transportation, giving gift certificates to people who ride their bike to the market, for example. And so again, these are the kind of intentions and the values. I mentioned it earlier. One of the values that the Cleveland Public Market Corporation has established is around sustainability. We need to make all decisions with a sustainability frame in mind to make sure we're making the right choices. And so over time, through the construction process and everything else, there's an opportunity to do some really interesting, innovative things that a nonprofit will do, which again, the city government never had the intention or the capacity. So again, I think at this stage, while the ideas are great, we need to keep them coming until the goal has to be to get the nonprofit up and running with the right people on the board and the right input, so that it has the ability to make the kind of changes that will be so impactful in the future.
We have time for probably like 2 or 3 more questions.
Along the lines of transportation, we live 2 blocks from the market and use it several times a week, literally. So getting to the market is not an issue, but on Saturdays and Sundays, getting out of the market, getting out of the neighborhood is a huge issue with bottlenecks because of the way you have to get the tickets for parking now. And with Lorraine Road essentially being landlocked between the West Side Market and this building, there's no hope to widen it. So I was wondering, I think the plan is great, and I think it's going to bring in a ton of people, and I'm thrilled. But I'm also wondering, are you taking into consideration traffic issues of West 25th and Lorraine?
Absolutely. So part of the plan is to move from the gated system which is there today, which causes all sorts of friction, bottlenecks, and backups, and hassles. And it breaks down and there's no revenue collected because the gate has to be up when it's broken. Anyway, modern technology is one of the ways that there are different ways of running it. It's become quite common to pay by phone model. So there's no need to have gates at all. The plan is to maintain free parking on market days for market customers for a reasonable amount of time to do the shopping, but then to be charging reasonable amounts all the other times, again, to drive revenue to support the market in a variety of ways. Hopefully eliminate many of the problems that are there today. So once the Cleveland Public Market Corporation takes over operation of the parking lot as part of the lease, that we talked about, they can move forward, hopefully very rapidly, to change that system from the current gate to the pay-by-phone model.
I'm wondering if you consider crowdsourcing, like GoFundMe. I know there's lots of people who don't live in the city of Cleveland, but care very, very much about the market, and who are eager to do something. And if there was a proper platform, then we could. Do you question it?
Yes, I think we will absolutely do that. We're going to turn over every imaginable rock to find the funding necessary to do this plan. And I think doing that, like a GoFundMe campaign, not only makes sense financially, but I think it really is important for people in the community and who consider themselves a part of this community, even if they don't live here, to be able to buy into it and support it, and this will give them a way to do that.
I was wondering with the addition of the food hall stalls, the commercial kitchen and event space, if hours will be extended like to weekend nights, and if the way it's laid out, if that would only be for those particular spaces, or if indoor vendors and the produce vendors would be included in that, or how additional hours might be handled.
Yeah, so one thing that Ted was trying to show in the design is some of the changes that have been designed. So the North Arcade wall could stay open longer than the main market hall of the market. So you can still go to the restrooms, you can go up to the second floor if there's an event at night in that space. You can have a great event on the second floor while you're looking down to the market, but the vendors do not have to be open in that space. So we created a way so that you can do traditional shopping during the day, any night events, or just wanting to enjoy the prepared food in the North Arcade in the evening would not interrupt the market arcade or require vendors to stay open for more traditional prepared food.
Well, with that, thank you all for being here. Thanks to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
I also want to say thank you to our hosts, Harbor Bay Trust. The space is amazing. They were so generous to let us do this great event here. We have the space for a little longer, so if you want to grab another drink, feel free. There are the renderings out front that you can take a look at. We'll be around, so feel free to ask us questions. Thank you all so much.